Hello, hello. Going live, 6 p.m. It's 6. Let's do this. Okay, so a little discussion that we started, or somebody started the other day on the page, was about charging and discharging and cycling batteries, specifically for stock racing. So this is something that's been going on for a long time, quite a few years now. I held out as long as I could without jumping into the iCharger and power supply and all this stuff. But I went to a few races and it was painfully obvious that I needed to get the high charge capabilities and have that power. One of the races where it was very apparent was IOCC a couple years ago in Vegas. There was quite a few guys excuse me, there was quite a few guys that could nail this double right out of a 180 corner, and they could just drag their wheel nuts on the pipe and clear it no problem. And I had to make sure that I was about 2 feet off the pipe to have enough speed to clear the jump. So that kind of pissed me off. So I was like, damn it, I gotta get this stuff. I guess it's the days of hanging are over. So I had a ProTech dual charger before. I can't remember the exact model number of it, but it would do 25 amps per channel. So that was okay, but it just wasn't the full power. So I hunkered down and I got the power supply and the iCharger. I use the 406. It's 40 amp capable. So the number on the iCharger is 406, 40 amps, 6 cells. So, sorry, I got like this little frog. I think this is plenty. There's another one above this, the big gray one, but it's a lot bigger charger also. It can do more amps. I think some guys are getting them up to like 70 or something. But this one I've chose, and I use 35 amp charge. And then I use one of the Sky RC dischargers. Sky makes them, I think they make them for G-Force, put another name on them. This is the latest one. It'll do 35 amps. The previous one would do 30. So, and it's also got a USB. So this is what I'm using in my discharge computer, simulations. I'll discharge at 35 amps until it reaches a specified voltage, and then I'll analyze that discharge rate, make sure the batteries are good, and compare different batteries, different milliamps, and see what it means, compare different batteries and that. So that's kind of interesting to play with. Kind of like the motor dyno, which I have sitting right next to me. It's something to get a number and then compare that number. So something repeatable that you can test and mess around with stuff. So those things are all good. So basically what I have is a 75 amp. It's one of the, I've taken my stand out because I want you to be able to see it. 75 amp server power supply. Anybody who's selling these power supplies, they're all basically the same. They're taken out of servers after a certain amount of hours. They pull them out of servers and replace them so that they have 100% reliability on their servers. And these power supplies will go for years doing what we do with them. So they're really small, they're easy to carry around, and they have a lot of power. So they're super handy. RL makes them, Buddy RC makes them. I see much more starting to make them now. It's basically all the same power supply. Everybody just puts their own sticker on it. So 75, I think they make 85s also, is going to be plenty for doing what we do. So one of the main reasons that I use this discharger is this is standalone in my pit. All I need is this, and then you hook it up to your batteries and then hit go. So the discharge banks that they make for these chargers work really well, but for me, I don't want to tie up one of my banks with the discharge bank. I want to have both sides capable of charging. So I usually have 2 to 4 batteries per car cycling that I'll use throughout a race day. So my routine when I get to the track is, this is already in storage voltage. So my storage voltage is 3.8 per cell, so 7.6 overall. So when I get to the track, I start cycling a couple packs. So this is storage voltage. I'll put it right on the charger and hit it up to 842, I think is what our local limit is. 842. When that's done, then I'll discharge it. Okay, and then when I discharge at the track, now this is only at the track, I go down to 6.6. So I'll set that to 6.6, pull it down. As soon as that's done, it makes the most annoying beeping sound you've ever heard, so you won't miss it. Take it off of there, and then I'll charge it again, and then this pack's ready to go as far as I'm concerned. I did some testing with the discharger a week or 2 ago, and I posted the results that I found on Stock Buggy 17.5 page. I can also post them here. It's just the pictures of all the stuff that I took. So when you show up, this has been in storage voltage for, let's say, a week, and you show up and you charge it and you go run it, it's about, now this is roughly, don't take me to court, it's about 10% less power than its prime. So you'll have about 90% power with this pack, just taking it from storage voltage and charging it and going and running it. So the internal resistance is high. The cells are not woken up, I guess you could say. So I always get way better numbers on the second cycle. So charge, dump, charge. And then this is actually going to be pretty close to 100% power. Cycling them throughout the night, like the race day or whatever, I'll just run the batteries, as many times as I want to practice. I'll just run them and cycle them. Once they get to their happy spot with the high amp cycling and also keeping them warm, they'll stay at like the same IR all night long, as many times as you run them. I don't see it drop at all. So I'm not worried about running them too many times or anything like that. I have batteries that I've ran for over a year that are incredible IRs still. So once you get the couple cycles in, you're in that happy spot, the battery's happy, and it's ready to go. So I also have this warmer. So it's like a lipo bag, but it hooks up right here to your power supply, and it just keeps the batteries warm. I have a temp gun here. Let's see what this thing's at. I think it's about 90, 85, 90. Oh, more, 125. It keeps the battery at about 85 or 90 though. So what I'll do is, if I have a battery that's charged and done, but I'm not going to be racing for 20, 30, 40 minutes, I leave it in here. Okay. And that keeps the temperature of the battery in its happy spot. So I found with the LRP batteries, they're most happy between 80 and 90 degrees. The IRs are the lowest, and it seems to be the happiest at that point. Any hotter, and the IRs go up. So you want to be like right in that area, and that's where I look for. So if this battery sits in here for 20, 30 minutes, it might get up to 90 or 100 degrees. And then you know, put it in your car. You're at the driver's stand waiting for your race. You put your car on the track. A couple more minutes goes by. It's going to be in that happy area of temperature. So you'll have, you know, primo power. This is all very, very fine tuning, stock racing type tips. It's so hard to get on the track with the right battery voltage and the right battery temperature and all this stuff. I mean, this is all, you know, best case scenario. These bags are illegal according to Roar. Not sure why, because the battery is actually safer in this state. But I know a lot of tracks and a lot of races loosely adhere to Roar rules. So if you can use them, I would say use them. I think your batteries will last longer. I think they'll be happier. Maybe that's why some of these older packs I have are good to go after a year. But this is a handy little thing. I like that, especially in the wintertime, because it can be cool in the track. You know, it can be low 70s, upper 60s, you know. So these will keep them nice and happy and warm. My settings on my charger, basically 35 amp charge. I have it cut off at 8.44, which after a few minutes or 10 or 15 minutes, it'll rest at about 8.42, which is our local track maximum voltage, 8.42. So some tracks are different, some races are different. You just have to adjust for that. These chargers are really nice because as long as you have quality cables and your batteries are decent, you can check your internal resistance while it's charging and kind of monitor that. I wouldn't take that number to the bank, but it's a good repeatable number. So your charger with your cables and your batteries, you'll get to know like where your range is on internal resistance. So these batteries are typically, they're always under 2 milliohms, and there's a few that we get that are under 1 milliohms. That would be considered an incredible battery. So if I get a cell that has 4 milliohms or 10 milliohms, then I know something's not quite right. And I actually had that at the last race that we were at, the Halloween Havoc. And I was like almost in a little bit of a panic, like, oh my God, one of my batteries is going bad. But it just ended up being the cables that had a bad connection. So I stopped it, and then I put it on another channel, hooked it up to the other cables, and then all the numbers were more like what I'm used to seeing. So then I went through and cleaned all the cables, and then the numbers went back down. So, but that's a good thing to watch, you know, from time to time, is to watch the internal resistance on the batteries. That'll tell you, that's the first line of defense, like, hey, I got a cell going bad, or, oh, this battery doesn't feel as poppy as the other one, back and forth. So it's good to watch that. The race day cycling of going down to 6.6, that's just an LRP thing. I don't know. I don't recommend it for every other battery. It's just what we do. We notice that we get much more punch when we take the battery a little bit lower than the regular discharge. The IRs will go up just a little bit, but it seems like the punch on the track is better longer. So we've been doing that for quite a while now and haven't had a failure or anything. Batteries like it. So that's kind of the routine with stock charging. So I have all these different batteries here because my intention is to run the same dyno cycle on the discharge with the 41, which I've done already, 49, and a 59. So what I'm looking for here is the concept of the battery in stock racing is you want to run the biggest battery that you can get away with while still making nearly minimum weight and proper weight distribution. So there's three factors in there all at once: runtime, weight distribution and overall weight. And I say runtime, like, we're not going to dump with a 4100. We're probably not going to dump with a 3000. Okay, you're still going to finish the race. What I'm talking about with runtime and stock is how long can you run and keep the battery above 8 volts. That's critical. Okay, that turns into your fade that you might feel at the end of the race. It's a combination of motor heat and battery voltage. Okay, so if racer A is using this battery and racer B is using this battery, this guy is going to have more power at the end of the run, period. No question about it. So it's a balance of, can you run this battery and still stay around minimum weight so the car's quick? Okay, so that's where the balance comes in, and that's where more of the whole car combination comes into. Okay, so some guys will say, oh, my four wheel is 1700 grams, so I'm just going to throw this battery in it and that's going to fix everything. Yeah, your car's going to be lighter and it will be faster in the beginning of the race, but you'll have less power with this battery at the end of the race, if you're dropping below that voltage. So I always try to look at my packs when I get done with a 5-minute run, not 15 practice laps and then 5 minutes. 5-minute run, pull the car off the track, and check the voltage. So I always want to see above 8 volts. If not, I start to look at, what do I need to do to put more battery in the car and not put more weight in the car? So typically I run this one in 2-wheel. This will come off over 8 volts. And I'll typically run this one in 4-wheel. We were running these in the 5800, last year's model, but the 49 seems like it holds power almost as well as the 58. So this one, I've been running this one in 4-wheel and this in 2-wheel and truck. So when you go to pick your battery, it's not just about that weight. Okay, it's a combination of the car. Now, in a 4-wheel, your battery choice is going to vary the weight quite a bit. You could have 100 grams difference between this and this battery. So if you're adding 50 or 80 or 100 grams in battery, a lot of the car has to change also. You're going to have to run more spring to suspend the car off the track surface. With more spring comes more dampening, so you're going to be running thicker oil just to make a battery swap, if you're going to compare and try to keep your program consistent. So think about that stuff with batteries. It's pretty much settled now which batteries work in which cars for stock, optimal. So it's not a huge developmental process now. That stuff's pretty much set in stone. So there's your little bit of battery cycling info. Okay, these are pretty much in every pit. I mean, I walk through racetracks and you're going to see the same thing. This charger is going to be in probably 75% of everybody's pit, and they're good. They're really good chargers. I mean, it's an investment for all this. It's an investment. But if you're wanting to be in the top 10% of stock, you're going to have this stuff, period. It's just how it is now. So, but yeah, that's a little hit on the stock stuff. Okay. So the next thing I had, somebody had mentioned diff oils and what's the difference in light, heavy diff oil, etc. So diff oils mainly will affect the corner speed and the acceleration of your car. So let's talk about 2-wheel diff oil. So we can pretty much all agree everybody's running a 2-gear diff now. If you're running gear diff, if you're not, you should be, because 2-gear is way faster. It actually was a pretty good secret we had for quite a few years, with like the EOS and some of the carpet stuff in the US. It took a few years for others to catch on to it, and it was a little bit of speed secret that we had. Now everybody's pretty much doing it. So 2-gear, 2-wheel drive. Let's say the standard setup pretty much is 7,000. That's pretty common. Let's say I'm going to go extreme. Let's say we took 7 out and we put 30,000 in. Okay, what's that going to do to the car? So thicker oil will have less corner speed. Okay, basically through the entire corner. It's going to initiate the corner slower. It's going to go through the middle of the corner slower. And it's going to want to push on throttle when you start to accelerate out of the corner. So I guess you could say it's a little safer to run a thicker oil, but you'll lose lap times, lap time speed. So you will gain a lot of forward acceleration with a thicker oil, because both tires are going to want to be locked up more. So the car, when you start to apply power, the car is really going to want to go straight. So that's where you're going to pick up that push on the corner exit. So let's say you went down from 7,000, you went down to 1,000, okay? The car is going to corner extremely fast because there's virtually no resistance in the differential. It's just going to kind of freewheel around the corner. And when you pick up the throttle, you have a much higher chance of diffing out. So if you're still coming out of the corner and you start to pick up the throttle, that inside tire is going to want to unload all that power. So diff oil is kind of a balance. It's always a balance of corner speed versus acceleration. So on a 4-wheel, let's talk about a 4-wheel front diff. We already talked about the rear diff, and it's the same effect in a 4-wheel, but now you have another diff. You have a front diff, okay? So on a 4-wheel, let's say 10 or 12,000 is pretty common for a carpet setup. If you went up to 30,000, okay? If you went up to 30,000 in the front diff on your 4-wheel coming from 10,000, your car does not want to enter the corner. It does not want to start that turn, because both front wheels have so much resistance that it just wants to keep going straight. So going up in the diff in the front, you're going to lose a ton of corner entry steering. You can turn the wheels and they'll be like this, but they'll just be going straight. Mid corner, same thing. The car's not going to want to start, it's not going to really take a set and really want to round the corner. It's still going to be just locked up in the diffs. Now, when you start to pick up the throttle on the corner exit, those front tires with that super thick oil, they'll start to pull the car out of the corner. So it almost be like, kind of like a front wheel drive car, where you get the tires pointed in a direction and you hit the gas and they're going to take off that way. So you'll gain a ton of corner exit steering and acceleration. So there's a balance. So in a 4-wheel, there's almost twice as much to get to balance, you know, to get it all to work together, to where you get into the corner, through the middle, you pick it up and start to accelerate, and the car doesn't do anything stupid during any of those periods. So that's a brief hit, very simple hit on diff oils. Diff heights basically are just grip dependent and ride heights, so it's very easy to remember. So low grip would be your dirt or your wet Astro. That's going to be a low diff. Okay, that's going to have the diff low. High grip, you're going to have the diff high. And good clean Astro is right in the middle, so we run the diff in the middle. That takes a lot of the angle out of the suspension when you start changing the ride heights and stuff, and allows the dog bone plunge to work to your advantage. So there's a few things. That's what I had written down. Let me see. A spool. Well, a spool in a sedan, I don't know if we might get to a point where we're running spools in four-wheel buggy on carpet. Spools in sedans do exactly that. So there was a time where we were running ball diffs and one waves and all kinds of stuff on sedans because I think the cars and the tires just hadn't come to a point where we found the diffs as the next limiting factor in speed. So I think once the cars got to the point where they had so much grip with the tires that the spool made total sense. And honestly, my sedan on asphalt, it has a spool in the front and a gear diff in the rear. It feels about like my four-wheel on carpet. It's pretty close. Like, the driving styles is actually very similar. I always try to think in my head when I'm running carpet off-road to drive smooth like sedan, you know, apex corners and hit the lines every lap. It's a very similar driving style. So, yeah, spools have their place for sure, with especially the sedan and all the grip available. Diff checker on ball or gear diffs? No, never used that. Too many moving parts in the car, I think. Let's see here. Squints is working, allegedly. Let's see. 70 amp cycle class. Nope. What are you using to warm the battery? All right, Ed. This is my little pouch here. It's got a heater in the bottom, so it just maintains temperature. I wouldn't really call it a huge warmer. We need our wake up routine, so do the batteries. Yeah, Keith Smart, I showed you the discharger. Let's see if we got any other questions here. Keith Smart, what's up? Trying to get down here. Where is your temp sensor? My temp sensor for what, Gordon? Which temp sensor? Why lower front diff weight for more steering entry versus roll center and Ackerman? Well, you're talking about two different handling categories. The diffs are attached to the tires, so you could have the most dialed chassis setup in the world, and if you run 50,000 in the diffs, the car is going to suck. So it's a whole combination. You know, it's a whole combination of getting the whole car to work together. So my charger temperature, I just use this. This is my little old school O'Donnell temp gun. You know, it's not like scientific accurate, I'm sure, but again, close enough. Yeah, Ken. So yeah, I'll run the 41 and 2-wheel, and then 49 and 4-wheel typically. Sometimes we run long mains here. Like some races, they'll do a 10-minute main. So then I'll just step those two up. So I'll run this in 2-wheel, and that in 4-wheel. So the 41 would probably still make 10 minutes, but like I said, you're going to have that decline in voltage. So what else do we have? Fire off some questions here. Somebody else was asking about slippers and stuff. I'll do some of that stuff here coming up. I'll show you kind of the basics on that stuff. It's pretty simple. And like I said, so the stock cycling and that, it's, you know, that's the cycling that I've used and had good luck with, all the LRP batteries. You know, I don't know if, you know, if you're running reedy batteries, there's a whole different cycling thing. Probably is, but that's what I've been doing. With all the high amperage charging that we do, I'm very shocked that we don't use temperature sensors. Yeah. We do find the temperature that activates. Yeah. I mean, they do sell the sensors. You can add them to your chargers and watch that. But I don't see a whole lot of temperature in this types of cycling. You know, maybe gets up to 90 degrees or so. Actually, I have all my notes from that. Okay, so here's my notes from that dynoing. A cold cycle, it only got up to 67 degrees. 101 after I discharged it. That's a full discharge from 8.4 to 6.6 at 35 amps. It got up to 101. And then I warm cycled it, pulled it off the charger at 105. And then I also did a resting cycle where I let it rest for 30 minutes and it dropped to 78 degrees. So yeah, it's 100 degrees isn't that bad really. What do you set your motor at with amp draw? I don't use amp draw, Oscar. I use all the LRP X22 stock motors, and after many hours on the dyno and on the track, I've determined that the best power and efficiency and torque is between 40 and 42 degrees of end bell timing on those motors. Honestly, if you put it on like one of those Sky RC little checkers or a Modelizer, which I also have, I think they typically pull about 3 amps is all. Let me see if I can actually find. Oh, yeah. Actually, here's one motor that this was one of my strongest LRP motors, and it's about 3 amps. Yep. So if I put that at 6 amps like we did 5 years ago, this motor would make way less power. Way less power. Also, this Modelizer info, I don't really go to the bank with any of the symmetry and stuff because I could run this motor 100 times and every time it's going to be different. So I basically just use the Modelizer to set the timing. So let's see. So if trying to get everything to work together, how do you know if one thing is wrong versus a different, or just have to change? Well, that comes with experience, Nathan. It's kind of just the track time and the feel of the car. I mean, that's important is, you know, not only just the lap times, but the feel. The car, you have to be able to drive the car. It has to be drivable. So figuring out setups and going through all the different settings and trying things, it's a lot of testing and time. That's the true testing that you hear about. Not, hey, I'm going to go run down to the track and drink 5 Dr. Peppers and say that I was testing. This is actual testing. So it's a lot of feel and a lot of experience, basically. So that's why it's so good and handy to have a good starting setup, like we, to post it on the websites that often come with your kits. They're really good starting areas, you know, and then try one or two things outside of that and get it to feel how you want it to feel, you know. Pay attention when you go practice and even make notes on what one change does versus another. So, what's the resistance, stack length, and then average Gauss numbers? The resistance stack length or the winding stack length or the pole stack length? So that's right at the rotor maximum, of course. Everybody is. Average Gauss numbers on a LRP. Let me see if I have any of my numbers from the rotor. I have an RMS Pro rotor machine. I don't see any of my papers around. Let's see what this one is. Nope, that's not rotor stuff. What's this one? Oh, here's one of the readouts that Rockwell gave me when he did the motors. So 1680, 1640 on his Gauss machine. Mine's usually right in the upper 16s. I've seen a dozen or so that are over 17. So that's pretty common with our motors, is high 16s, low 17s, right around there. But those numbers individually don't mean anything. It's the whole motor combination, you know. So the Trinity rotors are notoriously weaker, so they're in the low 16s, mid 16s usually, and that's where those motors make a lot of power, in the mid and upper end. So yeah, a Gauss number by itself doesn't mean much. Let's see, asking for information on the LRP motor. I've heard one of the main problems with Sky RC for the motor numbers is the settings are different when the ESC you're running can make a motor. Yeah, I mean, the Sky RC little checkers are just very inaccurate. Yeah, it's setting a motor for amperage was something that we did, 5 years ago. And motors have completely changed in that amount of time, and we also have better information. So I've dyno tons of our motors and found a very consistent setting on all of them, and yeah, seem to have pretty good success in off-road and on-road both with the same settings. So yeah, no worries with the little analyzers. So I'm trying to think of what else we might have to talk about on this Tech Tip Tuesday. A little bit of tire voodoo. I know Ken was talking about that. Yeah, tire voodoo is pretty crazy. It's my least favorite part of running dirt is having and making the exact right tire for the exact right time. So, yeah, tire voodoo is something else. Okay, well, I guess maybe we'll call it on this one. Yeah, we can do this maybe every Tuesday night just for a little bit, 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. Not enough time. Yeah, there's not enough time for voodoo. Yeah, even when you've been doing voodoo for 10 years, it takes you several days to figure out what that weekend's voodoo wants. It's a hair-pulling thing. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll get going. Maybe put up some topics for next week, and then I can write them down. We can go through them. Nathan, from what I've seen, most of the certified X Factors run around 17. Not sure what stock rotors are for normal. I know they sell yeah. I haven't tested that in Trinity Motors. I've tested quite a few certified actual A-team drivers X Factors on my dyno, and I haven't found those numbers. Push the motors to 170. I don't think so. That's if they are, they're not doing it by choice, because you really drop a lot of power above 140, even above 120. That's why they have a specific temperature that's required when they test the stators on the motors, because even 10 degrees can make a huge difference in the internal resistance in the stators. So a motor at 170 is probably making 70% power. So we've always kept our motors about 120, 130 at the most, and you don't get the fade at the end of the race. So yeah, that seems like some internet info there. But okay, well, we're going to wrap it up, and yeah, put down some stuff for next week. We'll do it again. That was cool. See you guys.